that you're probably doing the right thing the wrong way. It's lost in communication. We give what we would really love to receive.
Right.
And oftentimes that doesn't translate into true care of your spouse. What do you want? Just say it. Let's not play a guessing game and then live with unrealistic expectations. It's not even the experience that's curated as much as it is the communication that curates the experience.
Dear young married couple, you're in a busy season of your life. You're probably working and involved in ministry. On top of that, you might even be parents or students. You're maxed, but you really want to stay connected in your marriage.
And that's why we're bringing this podcast to you.
I'm Adam King.
And I'm Carissa King, and we work with busy couples just like you in our counseling office here in Sacramento, California. We also work with couples all over the world through online counseling, and our couples are really just looking for ways to communicate with each other more effectively. Some of them are looking to heal from a breach in trust or find direction in fulfilling the purpose that God has for them.
So come and join us as we have a conversation. We'll talk with therapists, authors, pastors, and other couples who will pour into us, giving us tools to become more intimately connected, get adventurous, and find purpose.
What we're looking at is this is the old library, second most famous library in the world at the time, the Library of Pergamum. You see these notches here? This would have been braces that would have come out to hold the wooden shelving around. They would leave plenty of room in the back here for circulation. And this library was rivaled only by the Library of Alexandria. This is a big deal. 200,000 volumes of books here.
200,000. What form?
They would have been scrolls. The majority of them would have been scrolls, rolled up. But also there would have been parchment pieces, because the scrolls were pieces of, leather here because Egypt wouldn't sell them papyrus anymore. So
they were competing.
They got tired of the competition.
Well, they just figure if we'll limit the paper, then they can't have more books than us. So
one way to win.
Yeah.
And this is probably especially valuable for you. Tell us about your passion for books and the library.
Yeah, this is huge for me. To be here is just a dream come true because
you're a lover of books.
Yeah, I'm an antiquarian book dealer. I'm a voracious reader, and I love it. And so this, in my mind, if I was going to gift somebody something, this would be the greatest gift in the world.
Yes.
Greatest gift for you to receive as well.
Yeah.
Tell us about the history of a gift that took place here.
Okay, so this is one of it's considered the world's worst gift, wedding gift. Mark Antony came here with Cleopatra. And obviously he was a reader because Caesar was a reader, and he was emulating everything that Julius Caesar did. Julius Caesar was a brilliant tactician as well as an adept politician and a brilliant man. He wrote the entire time he was on his campaigns in Gaul, he wrote the Gallic Wars, researching, reading voraciously. So Mark Antony carries that same love for books over.
So what you're saying is there's something to be said about the whole saying, readers are leaders?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. The greatest leaders in the world, with the probably exception of Genghis Khan, was great readers. And that is a footnote to history, is that he was just leveling and terrorizing. He wasn't building anything. He was building an empire of fear. And so we link that as readers with just naked and raw conquest that has no link to the past and has no purpose in the future. It's just conquest for conquest's sake.
Right.
So he is a footnote in history. So he would be the one exception to that.
Okay.
In a sense. But
Well,
So-
bring us back to Mark Antony.
Tell us.
Okay,
Yeah.
so Mark Antony and Cleopatra get here, and his love language apparently was gifts and giving of gifts. And so Mark Antony comes in and gives all of the famed library of Pergamum to her as a wedding present to Cleopatra. And
Which would seem to be an amazing gift to get.
Oh, it was well, and it had great meaning as far as he was trying to remember. She is now the widow of Julius Caesar, and kind of as his lover, and so she's cut loose from him. His empire's crumbling. Mark Antony's trying to prove that he's as good as Julius Caesar. Well, Caesar, I don't believe Caesar actually burned the library in Alexandria down, but his soldiers did during the battle. It caught fire, whether purposely or accidentally. But this was Mark Antony's way of saying, we're going to go to Alexandria and rebuild, and this was part of his dream. So he gives her this as a gift. The only problem is she wasn't a reader. So it was a great, great gift, but it had very little purpose for her other than that it was something he gave her.
Well, could she even understand the language?
No, most of what was in here was Greek writings and some in Latin, which she may have been able. It's debated whether or not she could read and write Latin, but she would not have understood a lot of this. She was too young to be properly schooled by the time Caesar came in. So when he gave her this gift, as ostentatious as it was, it just didn't resonate. And so half of this all got demolished. They tore it all down, loaded it up, traipsed it over to the sea, put it on boats, and shipped it out. Half of it never made it to Egypt. It ended up rotting and just being destroyed somewhere. We don't even know where it is.
So like one of the greatest treasures of the ancient world ended up rotting on a dock somewhere.
Absolutely. And what did make it, the few ships that actually made it through and made it to Alexandria, it got burned. All of those documents got burned in another fire, now the second great fire in Alexandria. But it was not the Library of Alexandria, that second fire. It was the Library of Pergamum, which was here.
Did she order all of the books to be shipped to Alexandria?
No, he did.
He did.
He did. She had history records that she looked at it, acknowledged that it was given, and walked off looking at something else. And he was just enraged because his gift wasn't resonating the way he wanted it
So
to.
sad because the gift that he gave meant so much to him.
Yes.
And it actually was a very valuable gift for probably all the people standing around.
Yes.
But it wasn't valuable for the person receiving.
Yeah. Which I think we can do a lot of times. We're trying to give what we would hope to receive, and without thinking of the person that we're giving the gift to.
Whether that's in the form of a gift or in other forms of affection or care.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Everybody has their own way of receiving affection and carving out meaningful times. And as this analogy best shows, things can be lost in translation.
So good.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you for giving us this history lesson in this amazing place.
Yeah, this is an incredible deal, and she was one very, very lucky woman, although it didn't mean anything.
Well, we'll look forward to bringing this home with some stories from you and some lessons from you on marriage and showing affection, communicating directly with your spouse when we get indoors.
Okay.
Thank you so
All
much.
right. Thank you,
Yes.
guys. Privileged to be with you.
So picking up where we left off in Turkey at Pergamum, we're here with Pastor Walker. Thanks so much for joining with us today.
Thanks for having me. I love being here, and I'm excited to be with you guys.
Aw,
Man, it was such a good conversation, just reflecting back.
yes.
Even though it was really windy,
Yes,
but oh my word, wasn't Pergamum just breathtaking?
It really was. It really was.
it was. So the sound quality may not have been perfect, but the backdrop was.
That's right. That's right.
So true.
Well, we're excited to delve a bit more deeply into this concept of not just getting good gifts for your spouse necessarily, although that's applicable right now during the holiday season, but also getting to know your spouse intimately, becoming familiar with their world. Talk to us a little bit about, you shared maybe a snippet of it with us when we were in Pergamum, but a little bit about your experience rewinding back in your marriage when this became kind of a relevant note for you and your wife to work on.
Yeah. So we were a young married couple that just had I think at the time we had just maybe 1 or 2 of our 4 children. And life, I was a home missionary for the first several years of our marriage. We evangelized for a couple years, and then I was a home missionary. So I started traveling a lot, and it wasn't all the time, like in the whole week, but I started to where I was gone 1 or 2 days out of the week a lot. And so it really bothered me because quality time was important for me. And so our schedule, we always had good intentions. We were always staying close. And, people think it's easy. Like if I was a pastor, I was a preacher, it would be, easier to manage my time or whatever. But it actually isn't, because when you're trying to manage your time and say you're working at the oil industry or whatever, it's fairly easy for you to get to the point in your mind where, okay, I need to cut off my job. But when your job is God and your job is God's people, and your impetus is your burden, it can actually just take over and consume every part of your life.
Right.
And by the time you realize that's happened, you've justified it so long, right? That you've lost control. So I've seen that. I didn't want that to happen. Okay. And so I said, I'm going to start scheduling time. And I've always been very, organized, and man, schedules are important to me. And so my wife, it was a bit offensive to her. And she felt like, because I didn't communicate, I just thought, well, I'm honoring her by carving out quality time, right? But I never told her that. I never explained that to her. Just all of a sudden, she became an appointment on a schedule.
And she likes that, right?
No, she didn't. She did not at all. So we were trying to work through that kind of stuff. And we made an appointment with Jason Carr and sat down. And I thought, well, Jason can explain it to her. And what actually happened is Jason explained to me that you're probably doing the right thing the wrong way. It's lost in communication. And so that's when I began to think about gift giving. I began to think about the time it takes to communicate what each other wants out of a relationship. And so even though I was very good intentioned, and to this day, years and years later, we still have scheduled time together. We just went every Monday at 11 o'clock, we go out somewhere to lunch together. And so it's very, we have time in the week, and it's not offensive, but I missed that in communication. I just assumed she would understand what I was doing. And so that got me reading and thinking a lot about how we give what we would really love to receive.
Right.
And oftentimes that doesn't translate into true care of your spouse. So that's why those stories meant something to me.
That's so
really good.
What changed for you then? So you had one idea going in that Brother Carr is going to shrink your wife and help her understand what's happening. And then you walked out with a whole different perspective. Or maybe what was that mantra, the thing that went over in your head that switched like, no, it's this way. It's not this way. It's this way.
When he asked me, did you explain it to her? And I sat back and said, well, no, I didn't. So and I'm a good communicator, I feel like. And, but in communication, like we do this for a living, right?
Right.
But one of the things that we fail to do sometimes, we think because we're a good communicator or proficient at it, one of the things we forget to do sometimes is to communicate. We're so busy thinking about how we communicate, how good we are at it, or how we can improve on it. We read books about it, we practice it, but often we forget to do it.
Yeah.
And so he said, did you communicate to her? Well, yeah, after it got heated, not bad, in a bad way. After she basically said, I'm not an appointment on your schedule if that's what you're trying to do. And then I communicated it. But then as we talked it through, and it grew into how to manage our family as well, how to get the kids involved, and how to make sure that the church business and church life doesn't consume every hour of my life.
Yeah.
So what I was thinking was going to help her ended up kind of completely remodeling my mindset of ministry.
It's
So
beautiful.
good. What are your personal checks and balances that let you know, hey, things are starting to consume me. I need to maybe, take inventory, step back and do it a different way. Like, is it in your body? Is it in your mind? Is it like pressure? Like, how do you know when that time is?
So everything, I'm pretty much controlled by my calendar. I could tell you what I'll be doing next week. I could tell you what book I'll be reading next Thursday. So my world is pretty ordered.
You schedule when you're going to read which book?
Yes. Yeah, I have. It. Yeah, because to me, I hear people say, I don't have time to read. And I'm like, then why are you living? Like what? who wants to live if you can't read, right?
What's the problem?
Yeah. So to me, that's just a priority problem.
Yes.
That's not really a time problem. So my life is pretty ordered, and I've counted in a lot of family time in that. Yeah. Even if it's nights where I've got to pile up stuff and do a lot of work, Tuesdays are insanely busy for me.
Okay.
And most of the time, my kids are eating right here at this table behind me in this office on a Tuesday night. Yeah. So I can't get away, but they come here. So we just, and if that starts falling apart for me, then I start recognizing I'm not being intentional enough about the things that mean the most to me.
That's good. Yeah. It's interesting to me that what works well for you and keeps you in line as far as your checks and balances is your schedule. And that was the very thing you were attempting to do that caused your wife some heartache, feeling like an item on your calendar until you communicated about that differently. Can you get really practical with us for those who are listening, find themselves in similar shoes? What did you say to her that helped communicate her value in your life and thus the need to have this scheduled?
So instead of treating it like a technical problem, which was how foolish I was in the beginning, to me, it was just, I don't have enough time and my life is out of control. I'm going to schedule time. Well, that's a technical answer to probably an adaptive or a cultural problem in my life. I was having, so instead of just addressing it with a technical response, I started casting vision for what kind of marriage we wanted to have. What do you want in a perfect world? What does it look like time-wise? Because I don't know if this is the right terminology to use, but I have heard wives who are married to pastors who say basically the church has almost become a justified mistress or affair that he has. It's like his, he has like another life he lives.
Yeah.
And that might be a harsh terminology, but I've had pastors' wives say that to me when we were talking. I feel like my husband is married to someone else.
Yeah, we've heard that for sure.
And that scares me, right? Because that's not right, no matter how good the cause is.
Yeah.
That's not correct. And so we started talking about what is a perfect life or marriage? What would it look like if we managed our time perfectly?
So you cast vision.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then from there, we backed it into the schedule.
Nice.
Right. And so instead of doing the technical applications first, I started communicating. I would love to be able, because to me, Monday is like a preacher's Saturday. Not that we get it off, but and we get to go fishing every Monday. But that's just your mind is kind of uncluttered. You're catching your breath from the weekend. Yeah. And I want to fall into her arms at that point and say, this is important to us. Right. And so her deal is throughout the week, she wants other portions of time. Monday is very important to me. Sure. And I thought it would be very important to her, because nobody has good quality time if you're in ministry on a Sunday, right? So Monday has to work. But Monday's her busiest day as a mother. It was like, okay, so it's just, so we've kind of adapted there, but we started communicating first and scheduling second.
That's good. That can be revelatory.
That is really good. I remember reading a book by Michael Hyatt that gives a very similar instruction to guys or people that are wanting to control their life better and find out their priorities, is to like write down a whole week, everything on it, and then find where your time is wasted or where you can gain it or all that other thing. But I love how you went there first.
Visionary first.
Yeah. What do we want? Which is a really powerful question.
So we didn't get an answer necessarily to just lunches and date nights in a week. And, but it was, I'm kind of a big thinker, big personality, run all over the world, do everything all the time. And she's not. She would, to her, quiet simplicity is more meaningful than being abroad somewhere in some foreign country, right?
Pergamum.
Yeah. So it was shocking to me that date night and lunch, wasn't everything she wanted. She wanted quiet time between this and this event. And so that was revelatory to me. And that came out. The other thing that came out is our life is so absorbed in ministry. Yeah. We travel. At this time in our life, we did everything that we did before and after a missions trip or something. We would tag on 3 or 4 days here or there. But she brought up that she doesn't have a say. She doesn't get to say where we go other than our family vacation. But, so we started working out a deal where she got the points, the airline points for all the traveling that I was doing. Okay. And then once a year, pretty much it worked out to once or twice a year, she had all of that sway to be able to say, I'm using all these points to take our children to Roatan with you this time.
Okay.
And so that gave her a lot of sense of, I can carve out a family with him. And I can travel and I can bring our children. And so she was making those decisions, and that was helpful to her. I would have never guessed or saw that. I thought I would have never dreamed that the 10 o'clock to 11:30 at night is like her time where she loves just sat quietly with me without interruption. I was thinking big dinners. I was thinking lunch. I was given the gift that nobody could read. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, it was brilliant to me. But to her, it was like, how do we just sit and have tea together and sometimes talk or not talk?
Yes.
Right?
That's so good.
So that was an eye-opener for me.
Man, I can imagine. Were you just sitting there listening to her say this and going, really?
Yeah, I was.
Okay, so I'm sure a lot of people are listening and thinking, okay, this is 5 love languages, like I know what he's talking about. He's talking about, the fact that his wife wants quality time and it needs to be quiet time and he wants, quality time abroad and more action-oriented time. And what other resources other than the 5 love languages would you bring in here? Not necessarily book recommendations, although we'll ask you about that too, but like just concepts aside from the 5 love languages that apply here.
So I don't remember the title of the book. It's basically something about the way to bullet journal. I've always been a writer, and we started bullet journaling about conversations we had or didn't have. And things that we want to talk about, things that we forget in the moment. We'll forget that we wanted to revisit that. And so I started journaling in those days because I was traveling, some couple years at the end there before I moved to Canada. It was 40 weeks out of the year. I was gone a day or two in that week somewhere. Well, as you're traveling, you think like, I would love to tell her this, but then you get on another plane, you preach another message. So to anybody who's listening, my perspective about the 5 love languages, my problem wasn't that I couldn't figure those out. My problem was I spiritualized my calendar.
Talk about that. What does that mean?
We're busy people, and not just me as a pastor. Most people listening to this, if you're a Pentecostal or you're very involved in a faith community, there's something going on at your church every single night.
Right.
Yeah.
And to make your spouse feel like she has to fight against God or anointing in order to get heard, sometimes we'll beat her down or him down to where they don't feel like they're free to say, we shouldn't be doing that every night. Well, because in their mind, I'm thankful that at least my husband's not at the bar, right?
Yeah.
Or at least my husband could be this, or my wife could be that. And they're at church and they're doing this. So we started kind of plotting seasons. Okay, for the next few months, this is going to be like this, but I'm going to take this night and this day, and this is going to be my family time.
Okay.
So we began to actively reconcile our schedules, even if it was God time, where before I spiritualized everything. I was a pastor. I had a great eternal reason for why I needed to be anywhere I was.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so anytime she would try to say, we need to stop this. Well, how do you stop being Sunday school this or, outreach director? Right. And so when your Pentecostal construct spiritualizes everything you do, it's not just as simple as figuring out your 5 love languages, because now you've got God in every appointment you have.
Right.
And how
that's
do you
the trump card.
How do you cancel God?
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And how do you get that conversation going to somebody that, yes, I love that you're doing outreach every Saturday and bus ministry is your life, but it can't be every Saturday.
Yeah.
There's got to be a balance. So Brother Carr helped me come to the realization that every date I had on this calendar was all God moments, and that she couldn't get her voice heard. And that was helpful in being more substantive than just which love language we liked.
That's good.
That is so good.
Yeah. And it sounds like you started seeing your marriage through the lens of a God-ordained, God-directed activity as well. So it wasn't like, I'm canceling God because I'm not going to outreach on Saturday. It had more to do with, this is God's will for me to prioritize my wife and to make sure our marriage is healthy.
Right.
Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely.
Because it's definitely not God's will for it to fall apart.
No. And that's where you come to the realization, what would it profit a man? And I know I'm taking this a bit out of context, but what if I gained the whole world and I lost my own family or lost my own marriage or lost my own soul?
Right.
Yep.
So God needs me, right?
Yep.
That sounds arrogant, but God chose to need to work with humans.
Yes.
Yeah.
God needs all of you to work in his kingdom, but he needs us healthy. He needs us balanced, because if we're just working ourselves and I'm a workaholic, I confess that. Most of the nights, Malia and I, we have our quiet time from 10 or 11:30. She falls asleep. I work till I'll read and write till sometimes 2, 3 in the morning, and then fall asleep and get up, in the morning and go. I just never needed a lot of sleep. So I had to back up and say, it doesn't matter what I need, my biological clock. She has a voice, and she may just need quiet time.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's good.
That is so good. When you were saying that, I thought of somebody said something like, more marriages suffer not from malice, but from neglect.
Yeah.
And it wasn't like a thing that you were trying to do. It's just you were focused on this, and she didn't feel like she had that voice to speak into that.
Yeah.
Because how could she cancel God?
Right. And then, everything typically that would come to a pastor is always kind of an emergency, right?
Right. Yeah.
And then that's where I just got to where I had to back up and say, look, every emergency they have can't be an emergency on my part. And I had to take control of my schedule, take control of my life at that point, because in the beginning, I had spiritualized everything I was doing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is that because you shoulder the complete responsibility of creating the church? Like it's,
Building
if
it.
it's going to build, it's going to happen because I build it.
It was a little bit of that in the beginning, but then you're a visionary, you have a burden.
Got it.
And you've heard the term helicopter parents. Well, there's helicopter pastors. And, and in the beginning, you've got new converts and people, and you can say, here's what it takes to get this done. A lot of times it was easier for me just to do it than it was to have another meeting, explain how and why. And, but then I realized I'm sucking up all the oxygen in both this marriage and this ministry, and I'm not developing anyone else.
Yep.
And when I began to back off and realize that I need to not be a helicopter pastor, I need to give this over to them, let them take responsibility and ownership and work on accountability more than me just doing it all.
That's good. A lot of people could rewind that and listen to that last segment again. We actually just aired an episode, or we will air it tomorrow. And there's Instagram posts this week about how to serve the church and not lose your family. And a lot of these concepts are covered. In fact, I think that statement you said earlier, if I gain the whole church and lose my family, what have I profited?
Right.
And they said that exact thing, the interviewee. So this is kind of another reminder here, folks. If you listen to the episode in November, you're listening to this one air in December. A lot of the folks that are listening are in ministry in some way, whether they're pastoring or involved, to a high degree.
Was it difficult for you to be completely present, knowing you are a voracious reader and driven, and you're a builder, you're creative? Was it difficult for you to pause your brain and pause your work in your head and be completely there?
It was when we were doing it without communicating. Once we started making communication more than anything, more important than anything else, it got very easy for me to be present. So, for instance, if we're just going to sit in a room just because we're supposed to be together, then I've never been bored a minute in my life, ever. Right? So I'm going to read something. My head's going somewhere. the bullet journal started helping. What am I going to talk about? What are some of the things that we aren't getting to say that we need to be intentional about what we say?
Yeah.
Right. And then we started in that period of time, instead of waiting and just saying, she'll probably talk about this, she would just come out and say, I want to talk to you about, right? Instead of sitting there, not communicating, being upset because we're not communicating.
Right.
It's that way in our personal life. It's that way now in our sex life. It's that way in our emotional life. What do you want? Just say it. Let's not play a guessing game and then live with unrealistic expectations.
Yes.
Right. So if you want that, if you want to be, if you want to be that way, then just say what you want from me. And I'm going to tell you what I want. And then we found out the time that we had together became just quality time and not a quantity of time.
That's so good.
Yep.
So I never had a problem staying present when we started just opening up, saying, I want this tonight. I want to talk about this, or I want to do this, or we quit hoping that the other one would eventually get there. And we just, with communication, got there together, and it just changed our marriage.
So good.
That's so good.
Not that we have a perfect marriage.
Of course. Yeah.
I love the fact that you guys are proactive with the bullet journaling and bringing probably some of your best thoughts from the day. I think it was John Maxwell who said that he found that when he came to his wife, he wouldn't have much to talk about. And then he realized that whenever he had something exciting happen outside of, like in his business or something, he would tell everybody, and that excitement would lose its, it would lose its excitement to him because he's already shared it. Yeah. So he said, just by holding that excitement just for his wife to share.
Yes.
He would be excited all day to share it with her, and then she could share it, and then they'd have an intimate moment. And it seems like that's kind of the point of this. I think we're going to probably get a bullet journal. Well, I do bullet journal.
Yes, you do.
But
we should bullet journal.
I like that.
That'd be
I'm
good.
going to do that.
Okay, so when people are hearing us talk, and I know a lot of people need very practical steps. We've talked in the realm of, gift giving, specifically with Cleopatra and Mark Antony. We've talked about the quality time and what kind of time matters to each of you. You mentioned in your sex life, this is an area that is so sensitive to folks when it comes to talking about it, even for couples who do it frequently or who might consider themselves to have a decent sex life. They're not actually communicating about their sex life. Where would you say is a practical area or step to take to start talking more openly about their sex life to each other?
We'll be right back to the interview, but first we wanted to share something that we are really excited about.
So, we all have those times where we don't feel super connected to our spouse, and we really don't know what conversations to have to get us to that connected place. And then on top of that, we're so busy that we don't prioritize those conversations.
And that's why we created the monthly live date night.
And monthly live date night is every month on a Friday night for 90 minutes, 60 minutes. We focus on a topic that you guys pick, and then 30 minutes we do a Q&A, and it's live where we're all together asking questions and giving answers on topics related to your marriage, your intimacy. And we share tools. We have handouts that we call homework because we want you to be there to listen and to soak in, but we really want you to take action in your marriage too.
So come join us live for the next monthly live date night. Check the link in the show notes for dates and details.
All right, back to the interview.
I would say talking about frustrations or unrealistic expectations.
Okay.
If somebody wants a back rub or whatever else it is, you fill in the blanks. talk to each other about those things. Build that expectation with communication.
Good.
Any expectation that's not communicated is unrealistic. Just that's the bottom line. We don't read each other's mind.
That's really
And
good.
so if people begin to communicate, that anticipation builds. So if it's a intimate text between married couples in the day that says, it could be as simple as, when I get home, I want to do this or that. You build that expectation by communicating,
That's
not
good.
just sitting there in your own privacy of your mind, fantasizing about what you hope was to happen.
Right.
And then you get home and it doesn't, because
It was an unrealistic expectation.
Exactly.
That's
and
really
it wasn't unrealistic because she wouldn't or he wouldn't have enjoyed
Right.
to participate in that. It's unrealistic because it was left unsaid. And the guessing game, and the busier you get in life, the less reality you really don't have. It's not a realistic expectation to say, oh, we're both going to get home and want the same thing.
Right.
It's just not.
Yep.
You draw each other to each other with communication, and that builds. And so that's what I would say is start your evening or start your time way out in front of it, even when you're not together.
Yeah. Yeah. It reminds me of something we often tell couples, that frustration is the result of uncommunicated and or unmet expectations. But I like how you said, it's actually unrealistic until it's even communicated, even if it wouldn't have been unrealistic to begin with.
Right.
Yeah. Oh.
And you find that both typically want, within reason, the same thing.
Yes.
If you could just ever align schedules, moods, and feelings. Well, how to do that is to premeditate it.
Yeah.
You normally get out of life what you plan to get out of it. If you wander through life just expecting the perfect meal, that if rarely does that happen.
Right.
But you're pretty much trying to figure out on Yelp or Open Table or something before you get there. Yeah. But yet in our marriages, we don't. We just show up and expect that, well, if we loved each other, this would happen.
Yep.
And that's not realistic.
Right.
Yep.
So I would say text each other, call each other, talk specifically about what you want to happen tomorrow. And that's probably what you're going to get. So in riding, they would train us to ride horses. I'm an equestrian. And he would argue with me. I had a horse that wouldn't pay attention. And he would say, look at that post over there. And I would lock my eyes. And if that horse was turning, he would say, keep looking at where you want to go. He said, because what happens is your shoulder, your torso, your hips, thighs, and your ankles, which is controlling the horse, they're going to go whichever way your eyes are set. So if you set your eyes towards something in marriage, your body will follow that. Your schedules will follow that. But if you never look at that, and because life's going to turn, but you got to keep your eyes on the goal. And if you keep your eyes on that experience and that relationship, your body, there will be twists and turns, right? But your body's pretty much going to be controlled by where your eye is. So keep your eye on what experience or relationship you want, and your schedule, as unwieldy as it is, it will eventually get in line and go the direction we want it to go.
Love it. Starting with the vision right there.
I do like that. That is so good. Start with the bullet journal.
Yeah.
And then your schedule.
Yeah.
No, I love it. It's so practical. It's so doable. It just takes somebody scheduling a time, maybe over coffee, which would be a really great idea. and talking about this stuff,
Right.
You know, and
Yep.
sharing those needs.
And it's vulnerable. You know, it feels like a risk because you don't know how it's going to be received. It feels like you could be rejected. But that's what intimacy is about. It's about taking risks and those risks being met with reciprocity.
Yeah.
And that's what we want in our marriage is intimate connection.
Yeah. The danger is that because we feel threatened, that, you know, the vulnerability is scary and we want to avoid that pain. Clarity always suffers because of that. And because clarity suffers, like you said, it's unrealistic that anything, your vision is not going to be met.
Yeah. Yeah.
You're right. You're right.
Well, yeah. Were you going to add to that?
Well, it's back to where we started in Pergamum and the gift of the library.
Wrap it up.
In his mind, he thought, this is everything I would want. But it couldn't have been read. It couldn't have been cared for because it wasn't her. And so I had to stop and say, what would it look like if you got out of this relationship what you needed and what you wanted? And it was stunning to me. It wasn't the massive library, which I thought it would be. It wasn't. It was quiet time together, not even going somewhere, just being happy to sit still together. And so that was all lost in translation in us in the beginning. And God opened a door to where we could just freely communicate. And now 20 something years into it, it's as normal and natural for me to text her, call her and say, this is what I would love to do. And this is what I would love me and you to do tonight. And we communicate. And if it isn't today, it'll be tomorrow or the next day.
Yep.
But it's not even the experience that's curated as much as it is the communication that curates the experience. So,
yeah.
I like that. That could be a quote right there.
Yes.
So, back on the topic of many books.
Yes.
We always like to ask, what resources could you point people to? Maybe a book that's been helpful for you, you and your wife, or you have a podcast too. Maybe you could direct people to.
Okay. There's a couple books that are not, they're very famous. They're not typically on your marriage list, but Crucial Accountability and Crucial Conversations. I'm sure Crucial Conversations makes it into the marriage list, but
it does. But Crucial Accountability,
I haven't.
We haven't
read
that one.
It's the sequel to The Conversation.
Okay.
Well,
it is it's pretty meaty when it gets right down to the brass tacks of it. But all of us have to be accountable to each other.
Right.
And I'm accountable to Malia. And I don't resent that. I embrace that. And so she helps me be accountable for my actions, be accountable not just for my conversations, but how I treat people and her, whether it's intentional or not.
Yeah.
I still need to be held accountable. And that is so important. So I would recommend Crucial Accountability to go along with Crucial Conversations.
Okay.
Excellent.
We have a podcast called Truth Talk, and it's hosted by Truth Church of Calgary. And we'll give you the link on that.
Yeah.
It is not very lengthy. I try to keep it right under 30 minutes. And I try to do a lot of book-related stuff that I don't drag into the pulpit. I'm pretty scriptural and biblically oriented when I'm up there, but there's a lot of other stuff that gets in the margins. The podcast is an overflow for the book thing. So
awesome. Yeah.
I love that. And if you guys are book people, then I'm sure, are going to like what Brother Walker presents there.
Yes.
It's going to be really good.
He is. Wait, what's the offensive term again? So I don't say it. Is it book collector or?
Yeah, I'm not a book collector.
He's not a book collector. and what are you?
I'm a reader. I'm a reader that ends up with really nice first edition books.
Yes. And thousands of them, might I add.
Close. So I'm an antiquarian book dealer, and I specialize in books from the 11th century to the 17th century. And then after that, it's too new. I spend a lot of my time looking at censorship and how governments and religion has censored ideas and why they've censored that through the years.
And you've been doing this for a long time too.
Yeah, a couple decades now.
So before it was in the news, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Wow. Well, thank you so much for taking the time today.
Yes.
Oh, we need to do the Dear Young Married Couple letter.
Yes, we close all of our episodes out the same way, and that's by asking our interviewee this question. So rewinding back to the first couple of years of your marriage. How long have you been married, by the way?
22
years. So rewinding back a couple decades ago, think back to the advice you wish you would have received, and then fill in the blank. Dear young married couple.
Okay, I would say the advice I wish I would have received is that she is the one and same as I am, not someone that I married. In the beginning, I thought that this was my significant other, and I realized she's not that other. She is me and I am her, and in the biblical construct, you're one flesh. Nobody can be healthy and unhealthy, strong or weak. Whatever she is, I am. Whatever I am, she is.
That's beautiful.
That's good. We can unpack that for another 30 minutes.
Right. Oh, this has been so enriching, and I know folks are going to get a lot out of this episode. So thank you so much, Pastor Walker, for your time and expertise.
Thank you, Brother Walker.
Thank you. I have been an admirer from a distance for a long time. I love your guys' spirit and the attitude in which you do this, and I am a huge fan. Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
All right, friends. We really hope that you got a ton out of today's conversation. And if you want help, if you want personal guidance with individual counseling or couples counseling, or even help with you as a couple reaching the goals you have, just reach out. Give us a call at 916-678-1797 or shoot us an email at hello@dearyoungmarriedcouple.com.
No matter where you are in the world or in your marriage, we can set up a counseling session with you and we can work toward progress. We also post marriage advice regularly on our Instagram, which is @DearYoungMarriedCouple, and we'd love for you to join us in conversation there. All right, see you next week.